And we're back. This is The World Exposed with Reverend Aaron Betts.
Yeah, Aaron!
Reverend Brett Connell.
Another Brett?
Reverend Alan Farkas.
He's absent tonight.
Reverend Christopher Gore. We are excited to bring you tonight's message. Words, hope, but truth. Get yourself prepared. This is going to be a wild, wild ride.
Oh, good evening.
We're here.
Hello.
Hey, guys. Sorry we're late. 12 minutes, but we are doing some rewriting and exploring some different new technical aspects of Restream, Zoom, but we have an exciting, unplanned show for you. So that means that anything can happen at any point in time. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, that got him excited. They like spontaneity.
Yes.
And if anyone has seen Alan Farkas, he's kind of like a Where's Waldo. If you see him anywhere, immediately contact our email.
Yes. TWE at X. I was going to say TWE at exorcisms.com, but no, it's TWE at the lighthousechurchinc.org. Where's Alan?
Yeah. Making a name.
Right. I don't think he's going to wear the traditional white and red like Waldo with the jeans, but you'll know him when you see him. You'll know him when you see him. It's our brother. But
we love you, Alan. We wish you were here.
Man.
Yeah.
We miss him. I think he's mastering the technique that absence makes heart grow fonder. And I think he's using that to woo our audience to love him even more. So wise man, Alan, wise man. We see what you're doing.
Yeah. Bless him.
Yes. Well, you guys, what's on the docket? What's going on in the news? What's going on in the world of reality?
Yeah, there's a whole lot going on. It's like, different day, but the same news, man. What do you guys think about all those riots and stuff going on over in France?
Wow. People are crazy to the degree that I'm mad, so I'm going to burn down my own house. I'm going to burn down every store that I have to use and all of the infrastructure that's there. So this is the wisdom that I have, because I'm going to show people that I'm angry. The
Right.
dumbest thing in the world.
It really is. And this whole thing started, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it started when Macron raised the retirement age or did something to that effect, changed their pensions or something. And the French people just flipped right out and they're like, nope, we're not having this. I think it had a nice, kind of a start to it. Like, hey, you know what? You could protest. That's fine. Once they started having the average blue collar Joe worker, like literally the guys that worked at the power plants were redirecting the power and shutting it down, where like government offices, government employees would have their power shut off, but they would continue to provide power to residential neighborhoods and stuff like that. Like that kind of stuff, dumping like thousands of pounds of manure on the front steps of the, city buildings and stuff like that, wherever any kind of official worked. Yeah, I think you made your point. But beyond that, it's just gone into total, see, this is what it is. It's mob mentality.
Yes.
People are like monkeys in the context that they are going to follow the leader.
Yes.
And all it takes is like one bozo to go out there and do something stupid. And then the other ones look at him and say, oh, look, he's doing it. And they just keep doing it. I guarantee you, if you were at a stoplight here in this country, that if you were the first person that just ran right through the red light, the guy behind you would probably just follow if they're not paying attention. It just turned red.
That is the most irritating thing in the world, because I really judge, is it safe to stop? Should I stop? And then now you have these red light cameras So you're approaching that light, you see it turn yellow. My first instinct is to stop, but sometimes it's not safe to stop because
Right.
too far through it. But when I do stop, the guy next to me goes by and the light's completely red. And I'm like, wow, if I would have went through thinking I was going to be safe and not trigger that red light camera, you would have got both of us because you had
Yes.
time to stop because I know you were so far behind me.
Right.
It just,
It's the follow the leader mentality. Like if nobody stopped and everyone just kept following the leader, everybody would be running that red light and not care. Like, oh well, we already got a line going. What are the rest of you gonna do?
yeah,
And it's the same way in France with these people that have literally, Chris, they broke into the police stations and stole all the automatic weapons, and now they're using them. Now they have the military out in
Yeah.
the streets. You can't do that. It's like total chaos. Mob mentality, like you say, it's the dumbest thing ever. They've just destroyed, oh look, we have one leg left on the table. Let's chop it down so we can all fall into the pit.
yeah. But see, this is the power of socialism. Everybody's put on the same level. Everybody can have the same thing. We all can be poor together.
Yeah. All right. That's right.
Just makes no sense whatsoever.
It's crazy.
Yeah, and I have not been paying attention to that. I know they're writing, but I don't know what the deal is. But I know that sometimes things can start out good and then get co-opted.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
They also had a killing of a true African boy, and they use that as an excuse to break things and tear stuff up. That
Yep.
it's not going to fix anything, it's not going to solve anything, but people are starting to realize economically that the world is on fire. You're seeing
Yes.
all of these different economies be destroyed by their countries because of their socialistic, communistic ideals. And you cannot run a country on socialism and communism and expect everybody's needs to be met. It's just not going to work.
No, it's almost like in economics, you have what they call the Keynesian solution. And it involves like the financial system primarily. The idea that they've been holding on to is we'll just print more money so that everyone can have more money. We won't go bankrupt because there's more money in the system. And that's the ultimate solution is to print more money nonstop forever. How many times are we going to have this government gridlock? We have to raise the debt ceiling because they set limits on how much money you can like print or have in circulation. And once you reach that limit, hey, we've printed the maximum amount of money that we've allowed, rather than solve the issue of debt, rather than cut back on spending and all this other crazy stuff they're doing. They're just constantly raising the ceiling. Well, we can do more now. The limit's increased. And that's the Keynesian solution, is kick the can down the road. But the problem with that is, like with Zimbabwe or even Greece, back in the 90s or early 2000s, whenever that was, it's hyperinflation. Your money becomes worthless because you've printed so much money out of thin air and you've injected it into the system that people are walking around with wheelbarrows full of cash that's essentially worthless. And that's the mindset of just about every official everywhere in the world. Just keep doing what we're doing, but do it more. Like somehow that's going to solve anything. It's outrageous.
And that is proof that there's corruption. That's proof that it is a planned destruction. Because quantitative easing and I print more money to do it. It doesn't take a genius to figure out that won't work, and you're going to destroy your country, and you're going to need a great reset, or you're going to need something to replace what's ruined and broken. So in France, they're destroying everything, right?
Right.
Over here, in every possible way, we're ruining and destroying everything. Why? To lay the groundwork for something new, to get everyone so desperate that we have nothing. What we used to have apparently it didn't work, and it didn't work because it was sabotage, right?
Right.
And,
And
the crazy part about all of this is in the 20s or the 30s when we had the crash, we had the roaring 20s, everything was great and grand. In the 30s, we had the crash. We believed that we could stop this. We have not learned any lessons from history whatsoever. And the fact of this quantitative easing and making more money, printing more money, people don't see that it's devaluing our system. It's devaluing it to the point where you're paying $4 for a loaf of bread and you're loving it.
Yeah.
That the whole thing is just crazy.
Yeah.
and yeah, go ahead, Brett.
No, I was going to say, yeah, that's exactly what it is. Well, everybody wants to complain about it, but nobody's actually following the proper avenues and channels to actually do something about it, namely prayer. But also there's things you can do, like contacting your elected officials and, organizing some, peaceful thing or whatever. There's different channels and avenues you can physically go about doing in addition to praying about it. And nobody's doing that. Everybody's complaining. Well, not everyone, but there's a lot of people that complain rather than actually do something about it.
Right, and a lot of those are members of the Republican Party. The elected Republican officials. I mean, the only hope we have is the MAGA movement, MAGA Republicans. The other ones are just they are controlled opposition. I mean, it's gone too far. You can't view it any other way. But do you guys know who Tulsi Gabbard is?
I don't think so.
She ran, so she recently defected from the Democratic Party. She actually ran last year last election cycle on the Democrat side, and she's recently defected from the Democrat Party. And she's a beacon of light for anyone who's still a Democrat, because she'll tell you why she left and how controlled and destroyed they really are. But anyway, so she was kind of an up and comer, I think, out of the state of Hawaii, and she got government representative jobs. And I think it was either in Congress, I believe it was Congress, but she went in there. She was kind of a freshman to the whole deal, and she was a newbie, and she got trained how things work. And she said she was amazed about what they really do. She said the most of her time was spent asking for money, calling people, trying to get people to sponsor, trying to get donors, trying to get all this stuff. That's what they were doing the whole time. And she said both parties are told this. They're told, don't work with the other party because you'll make them look good. We need to look good. So it's like bills and good propositions that could be moved forward for the good of the country. They're not set up to allow things to properly move forward. They're set up to fight amongst each other, be so self-concerned about their own party and their own self that what really needs to happen won't happen. They're trying to build themselves up. They're trying to get more money, and they're trying to make the party look good. So both kind of party heads train everyone under them to, you are about the party. You are not about what's best for the country. You're about the party, what's best for the party. And that's really what they're training. And she'll tell you all about it. She's actually got really good airtime. She's been on Glenn Beck. She's been on Joe Rogan. She's been on all kind of stuff. But I don't know if she wrote a book yet, but anyway, leaving the Democratic Party, boom, she's a light. And she still needs to come around, I believe, and embrace MAGA,
Right.
But she's getting there, and she would be more of an ally, right?
Yeah. Well,
But
plus,
yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, but I was saying, and that's just a little taste of what the swamp is really like, because
Yeah.
the swamp needs to be drained. I mean, there's, the Fed's not going to be audited. Things aren't really going to change unless this thing is drained down. And we believe that President Trump was anointed to drain.
What do you
Yes.
think the major opposition is to MAGA, Make America Great Again?
Who's the greatest opposition?
Yeah, why is there so much opposition to the
Yeah.
United States being great again?
Well,
What's wrong with that concept?
yeah, right. Bureaucracy, the deep state, uh, and to go down the rabbit hole, secret societies and groups that make agreements that go deeper than your political affiliation.
Mm.
I mean, the government is locked down and compartmentalized in so many different ways, and that's the deep state. The deep state isn't just these career bureaucrats and politicians that are entrenched. I mean, that's a big part of it, but it's what got them there and what's keeping them in there. And I believe it's backdoor deals. It's your hidden societies, secret societies that are entrenched within all forms of the government. And like, so when President Trump did his thing, he appointed people, and not all of them were good. Talk about John Bolton. We can name all kind of different names. He found out, wow, these people, well, they hoodwinked me. They're not really for me, but he gained something very valuable because he got to see who's real and who's fake, who's entrenched in the deep state and who's really good. And those that are not entrenched in the deep state, I would call MAGA.
I think one of the fundamental errors that we've seen from the Republican Party is they don't clean house when they get in there. So we've had all of these Democratic people hidden inside of the system. And it used to be whenever you change presidents, everybody in the government changed.
Yeah.
But they said, oh, we want continuity of government. So we're not going to fire you. We'll let you stay. But, the president and even the governors, whenever we had a governor change, the whole top staff changed. And then eventually it trickled down to everybody else. And the same thing would be true with the president. I think it stopped after Ronald Reagan. Whoever, I think it was Bill Clinton, said, well, we'll just keep them in there. So they kept keeping people in. And these people, instead of them losing their power, they gained more power. They kept naked pictures on people that they wanted to control. And, they kept using these naked pictures all the time. And then they stayed and they stayed. So there's a principle, that's biblical. If God tells you to kill your enemy, and I'm not talking about killing people, but if God tells you to kill your enemy and destroy him, you're supposed to destroy your enemy. And how many times did the nation of Israel, we want to leave them alive because we want to take and we want to keep keep them, we're going to use them as slaves? No, they need to be destroyed. They need to be destroyed because there's evil inside of them, and that evil is going to spread and it's going to continue to destroy everything else. And looking at politics, one of the great failings that I think we have is that people don't get booted out. They don't get made to leave their jobs. Hey, thank you for serving for the 8 years that you served, Mrs. Secretary and Mr. Custodian, but it's time for you to go.
Yep.
I got a friend that needs a job, and I'm going to put him in that office in that space. And then you have people that are loyal to you throughout your term. And then that way you don't have all of this undermining that went on. President Trump got railroaded so many different times because of the fake Republicans that was in there, and they kept saying, oh, you need to do this because this is gonna make you be even, and other people are gonna like you. So if you put these people in there, we'll support you even more. And you're right, Aaron, he got blindsided by so many different things because there's so many different roles that need to be fulfilled. And you're in, I believe he was idealistic when he first got in there. Everybody's going to try to do what's best for the company. I mean, for the country,
Yeah.
So all of these people want to do what's right. And I think he soon found out that they didn't.
Yeah, man. And he probably really had just imagine, he probably kind of had an awakening of his own self, being like, wow.
I think that hurt him. I
Yeah.
think that hurt him emotionally. Not that he did anything wrong.
True.
But
but he has the deets. He has the understanding of how deep it goes and who is in on it. Because there's plenty of stuff he's not saying.
if he doesn't, something's wrong.
Right.
But he should at this point.
But he got to
Especially.
see. Yeah, but I believe it's so valuable, all the cards that he holds, and that's why he is so feared now. Because it was all about the second term. The first term was finding out where all the snakes are hiding while still trying to do his job, right?
But it shouldn't have been, to me, my own opinion, it shouldn't have been find out where the snakes are hiding. If you are not a Republican, I'm a Republican president. If you're not a Republican, or if you've been here 30 years, here's this little piece of paper. Thank you for your service. We're going to replace you. It would have cut so much off of his plate. Yeah, he would have had to find people to fill those spots in those positions. But so much time has been spent looking for leaks, trying to find people who were doing evil, when he could have just fired everybody and put in people that he knew. As well known as President Trump is and was, they could have filled those positions with good people who needed jobs.
Yeah, and it's kind of strange that that didn't happen. Like I heard that a lot of the generals that Obama appointed remained there.
Yeah,
Like Obama appointed all kind of woke, before woke was a thing, all kind of weird, kind of fringe people to spots in military power, and they just kind of remained there.
and this explains why we lost all of those wars. We didn't fight them with the mentality of we need to win,
Right.
or we were in wars that we shouldn't have been in.
And real talk, like that is kind of a question we have about, President Trump. But I could see how he was like, all right, if I start really cutting the heads off these snakes right now, all hell's gonna break loose.
Let it break loose.
Right. And then
What do you got now? You have nothing.
it did on January 6th. All that orchestrated thing, January 6th broke loose, and it's unfortunate, and we're hoping he gets back in there and can.
Where's Alan at? It was a psyop. It was the Luciferians.
Yeah. MK Ultra.
Yeah.
Dude,
But that's the thing, though. These people, they have crisis actors. I wish I had this thing, because it showed right there in actual video footage. There was a school shooting somewhere. I can't remember which one. They had this woman standing out there boo-hooing and crying. She was supposedly a teacher there. And then fast forward, a couple years later, 2 or 3 years later, there was another school shooting, totally different side of the country. And she's there. It's the same woman.
Stop.
And she goes, "Oh, I just happened to be in the area on vacation with my daughter, and this shooting happened. Oh, I can't believe it." And it's like, are you kidding me?
You're a prepaid method actor.
Right. These
Get out of
people
here.
are real. Yeah. But I'll tell you what's boiling my blood here. There's a pandemic on the internet of this fact checker baloney going on.
Whoo, preach.
And I got to tell you, I've actually looked into this personally, because it blows my mind. I actually have an example right here that I'll give you this example of what I'm talking about. I just pulled this up. Quick summary. What they do is the whole first page of Google is literally paid people, these large corporations, special interests, agenda holding people. They pay Google money
Really?
to have their results be the first on the page. It's more than search engine optimization. Oh, I use the right keywords and, I'm in first place. It's more than that. They pay these people to have, and I don't understand exactly the mechanics they use to achieve this,
Yeah.
but they give them money and they're the first result on the page because they want, look, the fact is, if you study search engine optimization, like how to build your web page, they tell you all kinds of things, psychological facts. People only look at your website for 7 seconds
Yes.
before they decide that they're just going to get off,
Yes.
because it's like everything that you need on the website has to be immediately right there on the front, because they're not even going to scroll down.
Nope.
They're not even going to scroll down. If they don't like what they see immediately, they're out of there. And this kind of stuff's true. And, who thinks about this kind of stuff, So my point is they have all these things set up where they'll put the whole first page of Google. Like if you're trying to research something or you have a question about something you saw, the whole first page of Google is nope, fake, false news, didn't happen, out of context. But if this is the dumb thing, if you actually click the link and read, because let me just share the screen. I'll show you what I'm talking about here. This is crazy. All right. So I'm looking up this whole Donald Rumsfeld used to be the defense secretary back when Bush Jr. was president, if you remember.
Yeah.
And he gave us aspartame too. Don't
yeah. Thanks for your artificial news, sweetener. Now, so here's the funny part. It says it claims on Instagram posts in June 25th, 2023, the day before 9/11, the Pentagon reported $2.3 trillion missing. So the context here is, they blew up the Pentagon because they failed an audit. They can't account for all this money. And they're saying, no, Pentagon didn't do that. They did not report trillions of dollars the day before 9/11, blah, blah, blah. And then it says a conspiracy theory. Look at the keywords they use here. A conspiracy theory, right? Talking about the day before 9/11, they reported $2.3 trillion missing. Joe Rogan explains, so he's the conspiracy theorist. Don't listen to him, everyone. And it's like they throw all this stuff right up at the front of the page. Most people don't even scroll down to this point. But it's crazy because if you scroll down, there's all this fact check baloney, and you actually read, and it says, let me go back up here. A February 25th, 2000 report by the Department of Defense office, blah, 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 identified $2.3 trillion in accounting entries for fiscal year 1999 that were not supported by adequate audit trails or sufficient evidence to determine their validity, which is a nice corporate professional way of saying we lost $2.3 trillion. So then it says Rumsfeld mentioned this during a speech at the Pentagon on September 10th, 2001. So he said it the day before 9/11. And this is what he was quoted as saying. Rumsfeld said, "Our financial systems are decades old. According to some estimates, we cannot track $2.3 million in transactions." He said this on September 10th, 2001.
Unreal.
So he did say it.
Unreal.
But, see, it's like, false alert. I can't believe it. But there it is. That's what I'm talking about. It's right there in black and white. They tell you it's a lie, it's fake, don't believe it. But then when you click it and actually read it, it's true, it's real, it happened. It's a psyop. At the risk of sounding like Brother Alan.
You only need one Alan on this show, Brett.
Right.
No, but dude, that's exactly right. And I heard a guy talking about exactly what you just perfectly explained, and it's pervasive within everything, all media, online. They tell you it's wrong or strongly lead you to think a certain way, and then by the time you finish reading the article, they'll say, well, and then, but dude, that is pretty much how the media works nowadays. So I was listening to this guy. He has an alternative news show, millions of followers. He was saying exactly what you just pinpointed. And for a living, for his show, he pretty much just scours news articles, and he says that's all you're seeing on these corrupted, things. But what does that say how they view people? We're not saying this about people, right? Yeah, they think people are so stupid that they're easily controllable and they'll believe the lie. And unfortunately, it does work for them. I didn't want to call people stupid, but we have been, our brains have been mushed, and we've been trusting of the media for
Yes.
so long and mainstream this and that it's just, you know, you don't want to not trust. You're like, what? And, you know, it's not natural to be skeptical, you know, when you're when you're blue pilled,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So,
Keyword
yeah,
FBI watch list.
I said blue
No,
pilled.
no, I joke about it, but it's actually a thing. The FBI and the Department of
Yeah.
Homeland Security has now set up, like they've defined keywords of what they consider domestic terrorists and extremists. And some of the keywords that flag those things that they actually monitor and watch for is red pilled, or, you know, anything Trump, conservative,
Yeah,
Christian, white male, you know, any of these keywords
anywhere.
that trigger these things, and you're on some kind of a list, or
Yeah.
they start listening through your phone when it's not on, you know, stuff like that. But what happened is society has been numbed, like, you know, totally, you know, apathetic to anything that's going on, and it happens slowly over time.
Yeah.
And it's, I mean, you could get into the whole thing. They destroyed the family structure. They got rid of critical thinking in schools. They don't teach kids to think for themselves, just obey the things we tell you. You know, all that stuff plays into it. But it's like God was taken out of everything that meant anything. And so you just have, like, the generations just keep getting worse. And then now here we are, everybody's glued to their phones and they just believe everything that they see on the first page of Google results. You know, it's not even right. And then we're crazy when we try to tell people, no, it's not this way. And here's the evidence.
You know what's so disturbing though is, if someone makes a mistake and they realize, oh, I reported this wrong, and they go back and correct it, there's no blowing that up and making it, you know, what it should be. It should go all over the place. In newspapers and media outlets and things like that, they're supposed to print retractions. They're supposed to say, oh, we got this story wrong.
Yeah.
So it's not that, you know, we're upset that people get things wrong and put it out there. It's the truth doesn't get told. How many times did we hear that story that President Trump stood over women prostitutes in Russia and peed on them?
What the heck?
Yes.
My God.
And no one corrected the story. No one fact checked that story. They're still telling it to this day.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that's so stupid.
It
it's
is.
Ridiculous.
It's retarded.
Who believes this?
Yeah. The woke people believe it.
Yeah. It's sad and stupid. Yeah, you're
It's
right.
not. It's not true. You know, there's so many stories that are out there that he's the head of the Ku Klux Klan, and he's the great grand dragon, and they just let it go. They let it slide because it makes him look bad. He's not been anywhere near those places. There's stories that are saying that President Trump was on Epstein's island. There is no evidence whatsoever that he ever even visited. The one story that they do have where he said publicly, I don't like the guy. They're hiding that.
Wow.
He got kicked out of one of President Trump's golf clubs because he knew that something was wrong with this guy.
Yep.
They're not promoting that story.
No. And, you know, it's crazy talking about that Epstein bozo. You know, the circumstances surrounding his death in prison, like nobody can actually verify that this guy's dead.
Yeah.
You know, all the security cameras turned off in some fluke.
How do you do that?
Yeah, what?
Did they lose power in the prison somewhere?
Yeah, with all the backup generators going on and stuff. I mean, come on, man. It's crazy. But this is to tap into what Reverend Aaron was saying earlier about the deep state. It is a whole society that is right in plain sight. And they live this elite upper echelon lifestyle.
Yeah.
that is it is the most demonic thing that you could even try to imagine. The things they do, the way they live, they basically have unlimited money. These people in positions of power, a lot of these people, you don't see them, you don't know them, because they like living that way. They don't want you to know what their name is. They have puppets, and the puppets are the people that you see in power every day, the big names that you'd know and be familiar with.
Yeah.
It's like they control those guys, and they're just sitting in the background living their totally demonic life. There's a thing called the dark web or the deep web. It's the same thing. You have the regular internet, where you go to www.facebook.com, right? And you go there and you see all your stuff. You can search Google for anything, and it searches the surface internet and tells you it has 3.5 billion results, but you can only get to 125 of them.
Wow.
But it's like it searches the surface web. That Chris and Aaron, that's only like 2% of the total internet.
Are you serious?
Yes.
I never heard of that before.
Yep. There is a
heard of that
thing
before.
called the deep web or the dark web that you cannot access through the regular internet. And it's only the tip of the iceberg. Everything underneath, you have to use what they call Tor. It's called the Onion router. And it's a special like web browser and connection configuration where your connection is routed through other people's computers around the world before it finally gets to its destination.
What?
Yeah. So it's like a proxy. But the thing is, people think it's like super secure and safe and all that, but it's really not. They found evidence and they've documented where the government has backdoored this whole thing so they can find people. Because what happens is you have to use the Onion router, you have to use the Tor browser to go to what's called an Onion address. And this is an obfuscated or encrypted URL. Like, remember we said www.facebook.com? That doesn't work here. You have to go to the Onion address, which is like random letters and numbers .onion. And it's like an encrypted address.
Wow.
You can't really search for it because it's not indexed.
Yeah, how do you search for something like that?
Well, you'd have to go to the hidden wiki on the darknet in order to have a list of links to all these. But I'm telling you, this place on the internet is super dark. And this is where these people do all their shady, illegal dealings, because this is where you go to your black market. You can buy weapons, you can buy drugs, you can buy hitmen. You can find it, like, if it's illegal and you can think of it, it's there. So it's like super ultra dark, mega shady stuff. But I wouldn't advise even checking it out, because the whole thing's backdoored. They can see everything you're doing unless you really, really know what you're doing. It's not even worth it. But I'm saying it to explain that this kind of thing exists, and that the whole dark web composes.
I've heard of the dark web, but I've never heard that the internet that we use is only 2% of the existing internet.
Yes.
That's
over 90%
scary.
is hidden on the dark web. That's where people go to do all this crazy, and they all transact. Like, they exchange their money back and forth for all the illegal, shady dealings in Bitcoin.
Really?
Yep. It's the currency to use because it's anonymous. You can't trace it back to the person who sent the money or who received the money. So that's why they do it.
Is Bitcoin real? Can you take it to the bank and pull money out of the bank with Bitcoin?
The short answer is no, but they have come up with a conversion principle where you can go to an ATM now and you have a special card that's linked to your like a Coinbase wallet, for example, or whatever system you use to buy cryptocurrency. You can now have a card that you can exchange your Bitcoin for actual cash. So they've made it to where you can do that. But before they did that, no, it wasn't something that you could just take into a bank and say, here's a physical coin, I want to exchange it. It didn't work like that. because it's all electronic, it's all computerized, it's all decentralized, it's anonymous. But this is where these people do this evil, super shady stuff, and there's no way to track them. They catch the small fries,
Right.
people that, oops, they made a mistake, they didn't cover their tracks right, the FBI busted them.
Yeah.
Sites go down all the time, stuff like that. But it's like it's bad. Believe me when I tell you, it is ugly and it is bad. If it's illegal and your brain can even imagine it, it is there.
I was listening to something that Jordan Peterson said, and he was talking about politicians, and but what he said, it made a lot of sense, but it was along the lines of this. The good people have to understand how the bad people think, not so that they can do it, but so that they can be ahead of how they think, for the purpose of being able to not allow them to do their evil. And it kind of stung me a little bit, because I'm naive in a lot of things. I'm not thinking that people are going to be doing evil stuff. I know evil exists. I'll say it this way: I know evil exists, but the level of evil that is out there just blows my mind. It absolutely blows my mind. How can you, looking at some of the things that they have in movies, torture somebody just for no reason whatsoever? Think about some of the things that they did to the Jewish people, with Hitler. I'm going to stand them up together and electrocute them just to see what they do. There's so many people out there, and I don't want to think about stuff like that, because I don't want it in my spirit. But if we don't understand that these types of people exist,
yes,
they're going to do anything in their power that they want to do, because they don't care.
Right.
They don't care.
No, they don't. And I think that some of us are perhaps called by God to, or let me say this: some of us are gifted by God to have a certain level of awareness, or to have a certain capacity to perceive and understand things, like you said, for the purpose of protecting people.
Yeah.
And in those cases, it's important to see, observe, talk about it, because we could be a victim of these people.
Absolutely.
We never know.
Absolutely.
And
I remember when we started teaching on perversion, and some of the things that we discovered that people were doing and were into, it was just like, huh?
Yeah.
How? Oh my God.
Right.
But we can't help them because we didn't know it exists. Now we know it exists, and now we know that there's help to be able to bring them out of it.
Right.
But just that level is just wow.
That's the gross darkness right there.
Yeah.
And because it's being normalized, and because like nowadays you can go on the internet and find this trash, it's desensitized people to it, and then the demons in them crave more.
Yeah.
And it gets more perverse, and it gets more inhuman, it gets more, but whatever, to every level it increases.
Yeah.
And it's like, good.
Then thinking about this from God's perspective, we don't see it because we're not thinking about it, we're not looking for it. He sees it all the time.
Yeah.
It's no wonder that he hasn't destroyed the entirety of the earth all over again. When you go back to Genesis 6, when he was talking about how the wickedness has just come up before me, and I have to destroy, because if not, they'll do anything.
Yeah.
We've reached that. To me, I feel like we've reached that point again.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely. I mean, just look around the world. I mean, I know there's good people, and God has his remnant, tucked away in everyone's. And that's the thing. Like, God is in full control of absolutely everything that's happening. But at the same time, the devil is allowed to do the things he's doing.
Yep.
And that is what some people don't understand. These things must happen to fulfill scripture.
Yep.
Like, that's a big thing.
Yep.
And, I'm so fascinated by the sovereignty of God, It's like a thing that always like my mind just sometimes gets fixated on that. And when I read different things in the Bible, God hardened this person's heart. He just reaches down, touches, and hardens that guy's heart for whatever
Yeah.
purpose. And it's like, I gave him a stubborn and obstinate spirit so that he would respond this way to fulfill my purpose.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
I'm going to use him to kill a certain set of people.
Yes.
I'm going to use him to destroy because he has this mentality. And then after he does that, I'm going to kill him.
Yes.
There's so many different stories like that in the Bible.
Chris, you remember the story about the prophet in the Bible? I forget what book but the story might trigger your memory. The guy was like, oh, this guy was in need or something happened and he was whatever. And he's like, the Lord told me to like which way to go to get back to the town. And God was like, don't go that way or something.
Yes.
And something happened. And then the guy came.
It was an old prophet and a young prophet, and God gave the young prophet specific instructions to give the people a message. And then when you give the message, leave. Don't stay. Don't pass go to collect $20. Leave. Get out of town. Yeah. And the old prophet came to the young prophet and said, God just gave me a word and said, you're supposed to sit down and eat dinner with me. As soon as he started eating, he died.
Yes.
He died because he did not do what God told him to do.
Yes.
And there was somebody else that was talking to the old prophet. I can't remember the remaining parts of the story, but the old prophet didn't have any hard feelings to the guy at all. It was like, oh, he should have listened to God.
Yeah. Like he was used.
Glad he died.
To say, yes, that's the stuff I'm talking about. It's like you just lied to that guy, claiming God said, and that guy died for his disobedience.
Did it intentionally.
Yes, and then you turn around. Oh well, you should have listened to God, buddy. Laughing, walking away, like that kind of stuff is like, man, it just makes me think, like, the sovereignty of God. If God wants you to be born on this earth and literally live the maximum 120 years in total suffrage, torment and pain and misery and all that stuff, and not even offer salvation to you.
Yeah.
I know the Bible says that the word will be preached to every living creature. So I understand that, but I'm just saying, just thinking about it. If God doesn't even want to offer you salvation after the 120 years of suffering, you die and go to hell, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah. Who are you to point the finger at God and say you have to?
Right. Yes. And that's the principle. So that kind of stuff fascinates me. But putting it all back into perspective, into an actual point here, it's like a lot of people nowadays are saying God's unfair because, these things are happening in the world or whatever, but it's all spelled out in scripture. It's all spelled out in the word. There is a plan and a purpose. And
yes,
our eyesight, we have like a field of vision, like it's narrow or it's like really wide. A lot of times we only see in a very narrow field of vision, like in our lifetime. Like the world doesn't exist exclusively in our lifetime.
Yes.
Just because we suffered for this, God ordained season doesn't mean that that's all there was to life. How long did people go? 400-600 years from the Old Testament to the New Testament?
Some of them 700 and 800.
Yeah,
that they lived.
Yeah, so it's like, well, what about the people that lived in that time frame? We didn't hear from God for 700 years. Does that mean that God abandoned them? No, it wasn't time yet.
Yep.
And so so they were born in a dispensation of time where it wasn't time to do anything. It was a waiting period.
And that was the end of it.
Right. Read the scripture, love God, do your best, and good job. You completed your purpose. You didn't do anything wrong. And that's the thing. It's like, what is anyone's individual unique purpose that God has given them? It makes me think about the one time that God was talking to that one guy. Nope, I only called you to save one soul.
Yeah.
So the guy lived his life. Yeah.
From Rick Joyner.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
Yep. So people might get this. So this even goes this way. Maybe people are getting discouraged. Maybe people are wanting to give up on God because they feel like they're not living up to their potential, or they're not fulfilling their ultimate grand purpose. But what if in the eyes of God, you're doing just fine, because right now you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing, which could potentially be nothing.
Yes. Yeah.
You know,
And
welcome
this
to
is
your
why
season
we
of rest.
shouldn't compare ourselves to other people, because, oh, this person is doing all of this. They're going to Africa. They're baptizing people, and they're speaking
Right.
tongues, and they're doing what God wants them to do. You do what God wants you to do.
Right.
Like you said, in this book, The Final Quest, Rick Joyner saw this guy, and he was broken up and destroyed because he couldn't get anybody saved
Yeah.
until the end. And he finally God allowed him to use God used him to win somebody to him. And then after that he died.
Yep.
And that was the only thing he was supposed to do in his entire life.
Right.
It's the reality of where we're at.
Yeah. All those years of feeling bad and being depressed and striving and struggling and screaming and crying and dying on the vine. And God's like, what are you doing? You're going through a thing, man. I mean, it's not the end of it, that kind of stuff. But it's like, I think sometimes people have like a voice in their head that sort of condemns themselves. Like God's a cigar smoking, tough guy. Like, why haven't you raised all the deads yet, you slave?
Yeah.
What the heck? It's not time.
Nope.
It's not the appointed time.
Nope.
Are you telling me that voice is not God?
I'll tell you, sometimes when I used to pay, I love that. When I used to pay rent to actually live in the woodshed several years ago, I had that. That voice was he was my roommate. But that was the time and season for me to go live in that proverbial woodshed. But yeah, it's all about times and seasons. And I tell my wife all the time, it's like a river. Spirit of God is like, I liken it to a river. And it all depends on, it could be flowing in a different stream, a different current, going in different directions at any given time. You get a word from God yesterday, and you're like, yeah, man, the river's moving this fast in this direction. And then the very next day, you're still holding on to that word from yesterday, for example, and you don't realize it, but the river's moving in a totally different direction.
That's right.
And you're like resisting, you're pushing against the waves. Like, I'm trying to swim. Man, why is it so hard to move forward? Because it changed, man. The river's flowing different now. And you got to be in the spirit, or at least trying really hard to your best of your ability to be in the spirit. God will see you through all that stuff. You might smack your head up against a couple of rocks in the process, but that's to build your character. But it works out, is what I'm saying. It's like,
it does.
It's not this stone rigid one way, thing. God's alive, man. He breathes. He speaks on a daily basis. God's not dead, where all we have is some ancient text to rely on. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
Spirit of God is alive, man. He's gonna talk to you. I don't know.
And there's something like our spirits understand this and are all for it. But every part of us does not know anything about this. But it's the fact that God tests. God tests. And this world is set up so foreign to God, and it's the perfect test tube. All the situations of life and the choices of our heart and the things we choose to pursue or run away from and fight and all that stuff. Like we're in a ultimate test here, and a big part of life on earth.
So is this the Matrix, Aaron?
Well, I would say it could be in a sense, but it's almost like anything you can do to prove your devotion to God in a place that is not like him, and when you wear your flesh suit, which is not like him, and all this opposition you have in you, are you going to go to him, even though you have all these weights on you and you have all these things pulling you? Are you still going to choose to love God, trust God, pursue God? Love him with all your being, right? So it's like,
Yeah, I find it interesting when you look at that going, we have the power of choice. We don't have to serve God. We don't have to love him. But because of different circumstances that come our way, we learned to love him. We learned to spend time with him, and we appreciate it as it goes. But there's people out there today who have no experience with God whatsoever, and because of that, they look at us like we're crazy. Like, why are you giving of yourself, giving of your time? Why are you sacrificing? Why are you willing to suffer?
Right.
And it's because we've had personal encounters that is like there's something bigger than us that's out there, and we know him to be the God of the Bible. And
Yeah.
when you have those experiences repeatedly, something inside of you desires to be in his presence. And when you look at our world, as we get older in the spirit, I start looking at things as this is temporary. We're going to pass through this life into the realm where everything's permanent, and it's going to be good. It's going to be worth the suffering that we do over here. It's going to be worth putting up with the things that we had to put up with in order to be able to reach and see God. Our minds can't comprehend what we're getting ready to step into when we step out of this realm.
Yeah.
And I've heard different people say that we only see the realm that we're in now. We know that there's the third heaven realm. We know that there's other dimensions, and even though we can't see them, they're still there. In our particular homes or particular places that we're in now, there's angels and demons walking around that we don't see.
Yep.
They have influence. They have power. They do different things. Are our angels, our good angels, restraining the bad angels and keeping them from harming us, keeping us from doing sin?
Yeah. That's one of the biggest things is the encounters.
Yeah.
And I even think, if I can say this right, one of the best encounters you can have in your spiritual growth and development is no encounter. Because what I mean is there's times that, and I think we've all been through this, where you're going through like straight up hell
Yeah.
in your personal life, and you're constantly crying out to God. You don't hear him, you don't see him, you don't even feel him.
Yeah.
And you are put in a place where it literally feels like God has abandoned you.
Yeah.
And that is in itself a thing. God never abandons us, but you can go through a
Does
season
he?
of feeling that,
He
well,
abandoned.
yeah, yeah,
He abandoned Jesus.
that's true.
So if he abandoned Jesus, he can abandon us.
I'm glad you said that, because that is very true. He became sin and could not even look upon him. And for 3 days and 3 nights,
He was gone.
yeah, yep. So so okay,
And then
piggy
Jesus even knew it because he cried out.
why have you forsaken me?
Yep.
Yep.
And then
Yeah.
he said, I thirst also. And a lot of people thought he wanted something to drink. But I believe he thirsted for the presence of God because it had evacuated from him.
Right. Can you imagine what that has to feel like?
I don't want to feel that.
No way, man. God, like the absolute presence of God being sucked right out of your being. No way.
No.
Not after all that. Because I think sometimes what went through his mind, he's probably thinking, I just went through all this. Now I'm hanging here, literally ready to die, and God has completely departed from me and abandoned me. Now I'm going to physically die.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything worse than that.
Yeah. No.
So then and okay, so piggybacking on what you said, there's seasons where God will abandon us. And we have to go through that. And that in itself is a test. Are we still going to love and trust God even when he has turned his back on us for that season? And we have to go through that, because I've been, in situations where it's like, I am going to die. And I don't, where's God, man? And you're sitting there crying, just wanting to die and all that kind of stuff. I mean, we've all been through stuff like that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's like, it isn't until after God will come back in, show up on the scene, and everything starts working out. And usually God tells us before this kind of stuff happens, so we don't completely lose our minds. But it's like, who's going through this that God hasn't had the chance to speak to before they went through it? There's a lot of people out there that are going through that. And that's who God's talking about. All these people lost and dying because there isn't a mouthpiece available for God to use to speak to these people and encourage them in their hour of need.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, how many times did we have an hour of need and nobody spoke? God wanted to speak encouragement to us, but nobody yielded to him, and so we didn't get anything. And this is how it works. If it applies to everyone out there, it applies to us.
You're just stuck walking in that valley.
Yeah.
With no opportunity or hope that it's ever going to end.
Right. And I'll tell you, I've been to hell 4 times now. It used to be 3 times for the longest time until about last week.
Wow.
I don't know why. I don't understand it. I had another vision encounter where I was down in hell again. And I'll tell you, it scares the crap out of you. And I was just full of absolute terror and fear, just crying out for Jesus over and over and over again. And finally, I woke up. And when I woke up, I took this huge breath in. Like, what did I have? Sleep apnea and died in my sleep or something? And I don't know. It's weird. But and I haven't heard any discernment as to why that happened. But it made me, what I took away from that was another strong sense of, this is why it's so important to help people who don't have Jesus. They don't know to cry out for him and be saved, so maybe that's what it's about. I don't know. But I'll tell you, there's good things that come out of this too. I remember one time I had an encounter where I was taken up. I can only imagine it was God's throne, because there was all these steps leading up to it. And I saw this immensely bright light sitting on the throne. And there was another light that was coming in and out of it. And I just had this intuition that well, that's Jesus. He's sitting at the right hand of the Father, and they're all, the Godhead is one. So there was all that going on. But it's absolutely impossible to look at his face. You can't even see it. The light is so bright. And I just remember all the way down these steps, I'm laying prostrate at the foot of these steps going up to this throne. I can't move. I can't even think. All I can do is just weep uncontrollably and say, holy. That's all I could do. And the love that came from that throne was so overwhelmingly powerful. It just instantly destroyed any kind of fear, worry, concern. Just being in that presence was like, every day of my life, no matter what happens, I am totally secure. I have nothing to worry about, because he loves me. That's it. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
And then it's like you come to or wake up or whatever from that. And it's like, God, it fades after a couple days, and you're trying to hang on to it and stuff. But that sticks with your spirit, man, though, so that you can use it to go through life and encourage others with too.
That's powerful, Brett.
I don't mean to
That's
hog all the
powerful.
time or anything, but I mean, it just came
I
out.
think
So
people
there.
needed to hear that tonight.
That
Yeah.
needs to be shared, dude.
Yeah, it's
I don't think there's a news story that'll top that. So
Now,
God's good, man. I mean, and plus, how many people are being touched by God and may not understand that that's the CEO of the universe, as John Ramirez would say, that loves them,
yeah.
Yeah,
I remember my thought now. I was going to say, looking at the thief that was on the cross, he didn't have an opportunity to do any good thing. Jesus looked at him and said, "You're going to come with me and be in paradise today."
Yeah.
He couldn't do any good thing at all. He just had to accept it and be okay with that. We at least get an opportunity to try to help people, try to, let God use our giftings, try to be available to be a servant, but look at how much God loved all of us, that before we sinned, he sent Jesus to come to us. He sent Jesus to be the payment for that sin. And there's going to be people who will be in the same situation as that thief on the cross. They're not going to have an opportunity to do anything worthwhile or advantage. They're just coming in. They're just coming in. But it makes me appreciate my relationship with God so much more, because when I think about him doing this before I even knew who he was, had an inkling or farthing in my mind about there's a God who loves me just for me.
That's
It's
powerful.
yeah.
It gives you a new perspective on your worth and your value,
Yeah.
to know that you're powerless to change or to stop God's love, no matter what you do, even if you do nothing. It doesn't. God's not looking for his love to necessarily be reciprocated in the context of determining your value or your worth.
Yeah. There's no way we could ever pay him back.
Right.
At all, ever. We don't even have the capacity to even come close to paying him back.
That's good, man.
Dag.
but the simple choice to love him, like I would say he values that as payment. He values that much, a reciprocation, to reciprocate just a little bit of what he gives us. If we could do that, that warms his heart.
I think the greatest way that we can make any feeble attempt to reciprocate with God is to just receive his son by faith. It's like that's all he's asking for, really, because he desires to be with us.
That makes him happy.
Yep. So like you say, Aaron, that's loving God is receiving Jesus and believing in him by faith. Yeah.
And it's the meaning of life. To
Yes.
To love God. To choose God and to love God and to trust God.
Right.
That's pretty. Is there any more? Like, it can all be boiled down to that. Choose God, love God, trust God. Meaning of life. And you don't have to meditate in a cave for like 20 years for that to drop in your lap. It's in the book already.
Right.
All the Bible. Love story.
Right.
And much more.
Yep. prophets dying because they're being lied to and stuff like that, Yeah. But here's the other thing too. You can't just do stuff and get away with it either, because I
Oh, no.
love the story of Shimei or Shimei, whatever his name is, the guy that was throwing rocks at
Yeah.
David. Oh my God, that's the best. One of the best.
Go ahead and retell that.
Yeah,
Bert.
yeah, I love this. So, King David is walking with his army. They're walking down the road, and there's this guy on sort of like a hill up on the left, and he's throwing rocks at David, cursing him, calling him names, saying all these dumb things to him. For like a large part of the journey, he's following them, doing like he's got nothing better to do but throw rocks at him.
You called him a big phony, I think.
Yeah. So David's, armed guards were like, should we dispose of this guy? Like, he's insulting the king, he actually should be put to death because of what he's doing.
Yeah.
And David was humble enough to say, no, leave him alone, because how do we know that God isn't using him to punish me for something that I've done?
Yeah.
So, and that even shows David's heart, that he's reserving room for the sovereignty of God. Maybe I did something. Yeah, right? A portable woodshed is following him. But, stuff like that. So anyway, they let the guy go. Fast forward years later,
Yeah.
David is on his deathbed, and he's talking to Solomon, because that was his son, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and so Solomon's getting ready to take over the kingdom, take David's spot. David's on his deathbed, telling Solomon like final words type thing, so this is, about the kingdom, these things. And then he says, and by the way, there's a man named Shimei who lives in this village, and he must die. Your first order as king is to put that guy to death. But he even said, if the guy, don't kill the guy outright, but if he tries to leave the town, then he must be put to death.
Yeah.
So they were stalking this guy. And he paid for his crime, throwing rocks at the king all those years ago.
What's even more fascinating about that is that God didn't kill him. He
Right.
made him live until David died.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God. Yep. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
he could have stopped David from having that right or that opportunity to punish him for
Right.
what he did, but he let him live.
Yep. Oh my gosh. Yep.
Imagine how insufferable that guy probably was, to
Right.
friends, or if you had a wife or whatever. He's like, the king doesn't even come after me.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm all that.
Yeah.
Right. And then that makes me think, how many people today are seemingly getting
Come
away
on.
with things,
Come on.
but it's gonna come out in the wash.
Yeah.
It
It's coming.
always does.
It's coming.
Yeah, and they're walking around all arrogant and prideful, we're this and we're that, or whatever, they're doing. But boy, God's got that day and time written down.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yep.
It's a crazy world out there, folks.
Yes,
It
it
sure
is.
is. Sure is.
Well, I think this was the most God-centered episode we've had.
Yeah, it was really fun doing it this way.
Yeah.
I kind of talked a lot, but
That's
yeah,
all right.
it was cool.
All the insight, man. But don't make that fifth trip. Don't.
I know, right? Like,
Yeah.
man,
Chill
what are you
out
trying
with
to
the
tell me,
hell
God?
stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry if I ever threw rocks at anybody.
Yeah.
I repent.
I forgive.
Yeah. Yep. That's right. Wow. Well, I think I'm pretty tapped out on topics, guys.
Well, sounds good to me. We
Okay, so
are very, very interested in helping you be people who think, because it's an important part of our journey, thinking and learning about all of the different topics that are out here today. As I go into transition mode. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
We'll be back next month.
Yes, we're coming back on July.
Sounds
We'll
good.
find a date real quick. Find a date. We'll be back July 24th.
Ooh, it's my birthday.
Oh, okay,
Oh,
maybe
No, do
We'll
it.
have,
Yeah,
cupcakes for you.
there you go. Yeah,
Don't
cake.
show up at
Send
your
cake
birthday
to me.